Have you ever looked in the mirror and just felt hollow, like you're carrying something heavy, but can't quite name what it is? You smile, you function, you get things done. But deep inside, something's quietly cracking. This isn't just sadness. This is hidden sadness. The kind that doesn't make you cry, but slowly erodes your joy from the inside out. A silent illness, a lifestyle, a shield. And most people don't even realize they're living it. You're not falling apart. Exactly. But you're not okay either. There's this low-grade ache beneath everything, not sharp enough to scream for help, but persistent enough to keep you from ever fully exhaling. You're not weak. You're just tired from hiding too much for too long. And here's the dangerous part. When you bury sadness, it doesn't die. It learns to speak in other ways. In your body, in your habits, in the quiet moments when you can't distract yourself anymore. It becomes illness, fatigue, silence, shame. Today, we're going to trace the quiet path of hidden sadness. How it starts, how it spreads through your nervous system, and why, if left unspoken, it begins to kill you slowly. Not just emotionally, but physically. This is not just psychology. It's survival, and if you've been holding it all in, hiding your pain with perfection, humor, or silence, then this isn't just a video, it's a mirror. Let's look inside, not to judge, but to finally begin understanding what your sadness has been trying to say. Let's start with this. Sadness isn't always loud. It doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it looks like overachievement, like busyness, like being fine. But your nervous system knows the truth. Maybe your chest feels tight, but there's no reason to be upset. Maybe you snap at small things, then feel shame afterward. Or maybe you just feel numb, detached, like you're floating just outside your life. This hidden sadness, it doesn't show up in obvious ways. It hides in the gaps, in the 3 a.m. wake-ups, the headaches, the scrolling, the way you keep postponing joy because you're too tired. Gabor Maté calls this the disease of disconnection, not just from others, but from your own emotional truth. We learn early that feelings are dangerous, that sadness makes you weak, so we silence it, and it works. For a while, you become what they need, what the world rewards. But the sadness doesn't go away. It just digs deeper, and eventually, it speaks through your body. Maybe it shows up as fatigue you can't explain, or chronic pain doctors can't diagnose, or digestive problems no test can fix. Bessel van der Kolk said it clearly. The body keeps the score. It's not all in your head. It's just that no one ever taught you how to listen to your heart, your breath, your trembling, your silence. So the pain gets louder. If this sounds familiar, you are not broken. You are not crazy. And you are not alone. This is more common than you think, more human than most will admit. So let me ask you this, and be honest with yourself. Have you been feeling a sadness you can't name? One that never fully leaves, but also never fully breaks open? If so, you're not weak. You're carrying something heavy, silently. And today might be the first time you truly look at it, not to judge it, but to understand it. Let's explore why this hidden sadness shows up, and how your nervous system, your body, and your past experiences all come together to carry the weight. Next, we explore the mechanism, what suppression really does to you, and why it hurts more than you think. Here's the truth. Sadness doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. Suppression is not healing. It's a holding pattern that over time becomes a prison, and your body, it pays the rent. Let's get clear on this. Emotional suppression is the conscious act of pushing feelings down. You know you're sad, but you say, "I'm fine." You distract yourself. You override the ache with productivity, humor, or silence. Emotional repression, on the other hand, is unconscious. You don't even realize you're doing it. The sadness gets buried so deeply, it stops feeling like sadness at all. It just becomes tension, exhaustion, isolation. And why do we do this? Because society tells us to. Be strong, be polite, be likable, be productive. But never be sad, never be real, never fall apart in front of anyone. Gabor Maté says, trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you when you're left alone with your pain. That loneliness teaches us to silence ourselves, even when we're screaming inside. And here's what happens next. The body becomes the battleground. Your nervous system always on edge. Your heart rate elevated. Your muscles tight. Cortisol flooding your bloodstream like a silent alarm bell. This is where somatization begins. Your sadness starts speaking through your body. It shows up as migraines, digestive issues, insomnia, or a constant ache that no medication ever fully explains. Bessel van der Kolk writes, the body keeps the score. Trauma, sadness, and repression don't just live in your mind. They live in your tissues, your posture, your immune system, and it gets more dangerous the longer it stays hidden. Studies show emotional suppression increases risk for heart disease, autoimmune conditions, even early mortality. This isn't drama, it's biology. So what do we do? Paul Gilbert offers us a way out. Compassion-focused therapy. The idea, what if the cure isn't discipline or toughness, but kindness toward your inner wounds? Most people respond to their sadness with shame, with self-criticism, with what's wrong with me. Gilbert says, that's the problem. Sadness needs compassion, not condemnation. And Kierkegaard, he called despair the sickness unto death, not a sadness of tears, but of spiritual abandonment. When we stop living in alignment with our real self, we suffer silently and deeply. So now we know how it happens. Suppression becomes somatization. Shame deepens. Sadness. The body keeps score when the soul can't speak. But this isn't the end. Next we go deeper into the metaphors, archetypes, and real-life echoes of hidden sadness. Imagine a child. Every time they cried, they were told, stop being dramatic. Go to your room, or worse, silently ignored. Now imagine that child is still inside you, still waiting to be heard. Hidden sadness often begins as a strategy, a survival instinct. When the world punishes vulnerability, you stop showing it. When love feels conditional, you learn to earn it through silence. But silence becomes a habit, then a personality, then a prison. Soon, you don't know the difference between who you are and who you had to become to be okay. This is why Rollo May said, to live fully means to be vulnerable. But most of us, we only learn to armor up, to protect our tenderest emotions with humor, detachment, or control. And yet, it leaks out in the way we self-isolate, in a way we over-apologize, in a way we never let anyone get too close. Because somewhere inside, we believe, if they saw the real me, they'd leave. But what if the truth is this? Your sadness isn't the enemy. It's a map, a signal that something precious in you has gone unmet. And that part of you still wants to be found. In Finding Strength Within, we explored how joy isn't something you chase, but something you build. And here's the paradox. You build it by facing the pain you've been avoiding, by letting the sadness speak. Your sadness might not say, I'm broken. It might whisper, I'm exhausted. I feel unseen. I miss who I used to be. What would happen if you listened? Paul Gilbert says we all have 3 systems inside. Number 1, threat. Number 2, drive. Number 3, soothing. But most of us live stuck in threat, or chasing drive, and soothing. We forgot what that feels like. You can't think your way out of sadness. You can't hustle, or hustle through it. You feel your way through it. In safe spaces, with deep breaths, and with gentleness, instead of judgment. Maybe this is your moment, not to fight the sadness, but to turn toward it gently, to say, I see you. You're allowed here. Let's sit down for a while. So let me ask you, when did you start believing your sadness made you unlovable? That if you showed your real pain, you'd be too much? And what would change if you let go of that story? This pain isn't just psychological. It's physical, relational, spiritual, and it's not weakness. It's a message. Next, let's pause and make this personal. I want to ask you something personal. And if you're watching this far, you probably understand the weight of this. What part of yourself have you been hiding just to keep functioning? Maybe it's the grief you never got to grieve, the anger you were never allowed to feel, the fear you kept beneath your smile. What if that hidden sadness isn't the problem, but the key? Take a moment. Drop into yourself. Not your performance, not your productivity, but only you that aches underneath. That's who this video is for. Share your reflection on this in the comments below, even if it's just a single word or phrase that comes to mind. Something raw, something honest. Let's stop hiding in plain sight. And if these kinds of explorations resonate with you, where we bring psychology, trauma, and real human experience into the light, then consider subscribing to Journey with us. In our last video, Building Lasting Joy, we explored what happens when we start healing in the open. But here, we're going even deeper, because sadness doesn't just come from pain. It comes from abandonment, from emotional exile. And next, we'll explore how to come home to yourself again. Not just in theory, but in practice. So how do you heal hidden sadness? Not just understand it, but actually start to release it from your body, from your identity. Let's begin with compassion. Paul Gilbert's work in compassion-focused therapy tells us this. Most people respond to their pain with self-criticism, but healing begins when we respond to our pain with care, not control. Try this practice tonight. Instead of asking, why am I like this? Ask, what part of me is trying to protect me? Because that sadness, it's not a flaw, it's a defense. It just forgot how to rest. Gabor Maté says healing means becoming whole. So, here's your first exercise, the inner check-in. 3 times a day, pause and ask, what am I feeling, emotionally and physically? No judgment, just naming why this matters. When you name an emotion, you reduce its intensity in the brain. You reclaim choice. The moment you witness the sadness, it no longer controls you from the shadows. Next, let the body speak. Bessel Kolk says, you can't heal trauma by talking alone. The body needs to move, to breathe, to feel safe again. That's why body-based practices matter. Gentle yoga, breath work, walking while focusing on your feet, touching the earth. These help rewire your nervous system for presence instead of panic. Now add compassionate journaling. Every night, write to your sadness, like it's a younger part of you. What does it need? What does it fear? What would you say if it were your child? This practice rewires shame into connection. Because sadness, kept in silence, becomes poison. But sadness, met with compassion, that becomes a path, a way home to yourself. Let me tell you a story. A client of Gabor Maté once said, I was never allowed to cry, so my body cries for me. She had chronic migraines, IBS, and fatigue. But through therapy, breathwork, and deep self-reflection, her pain began to soften. What changed? Not her job, not her past, but her relationship to herself. She stopped treating her sadness like a flaw and started treating it like a signal. That's the shift. From fear to familiarity, from suppression to support, from what's wrong with me to what needs my care right now. Paul Gilbert reminds us, compassion is not soft, it's courageous. It takes strength to feel what you've been avoiding for years. But that strength is already inside you. It always was. So let this be your invitation to stop apologizing for your sadness, to stop fearing your own depth, to begin again, gently. Because sadness, when held in love, can become your guide back to wholeness. But here's the truth. This healing path isn't always smooth. Next, let's talk about resistance. The fear, the loneliness, the voices inside you that don't want you to change. Let's be honest, healing hurts. Not because it's wrong, but because it asks you to feel again, to reopen wounds you learned to live around. And that's terrifying. The moment you stop numbing, the sadness rushes in. It can feel overwhelming, unbearable, like grief that never got a funeral, or a voice that's been silenced for decades, suddenly screaming to be heard. And then there's the shame, the voice that says, "You're too sensitive, you're being dramatic, you should be over this by now." That voice isn't the truth. It's a scar from old survival. Gabor Maté reminds us, when we punish ourselves for our pain, we deepen it. You're not broken, you adapted, you protected yourself, in the only way you knew how. But still, resistance shows up. You'll feel the pull to shut down, to go numb again, to tell yourself, it's not that bad. That's okay. It's part of the process. Rollo May said, "The opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity. And the world rewards those who conform, even if they're dying inside." So don't be surprised if people around you resist your healing too. Because when you stop hiding your sadness, you challenge the people who still are. You make the invisible visible, and that's uncomfortable. For them, then sometimes for you. But the path through sadness is not about comfort. It's about the truth. And truth has never needed to be polite, to be liberating. What's the hardest part of this process for you? What resistance comes up when you try to feel instead of avoid? You don't have to be eloquent. You just have to be real, because hidden sadness loses its power when it's spoken, when it's shared, when it's no longer something you carry alone. You're not too much. You're not too late. You're exactly where your healing begins. And if you've made it this far, then you're already further along than you think. Next, we step into the realization, the awakening, not as a destination, but as a return to the self that was never broken to begin with. Something happens when you finally sit with your sadness, not to fix it, but to witness it. The ache begins to speak, and it doesn't say, "I'm weak." It says, "I've been alone for too long." You realize your sadness was never your enemy. It was your protector, your quiet guardian. The only part of you brave enough to feel when the rest of you had to survive. This is the turning point. When sadness becomes sacred. When your pain stops being a punishment and starts becoming a path. It's not about being happy all the time. It's about becoming whole, integrated, no longer split between the parts you show and the parts you hide. You begin to feel things again. Not just sorrow, but awe, beauty, gratitude. Not because the sadness is gone, but because it's no longer blocking the way. This is what Kierkegaard meant when he wrote of despair as a sickness of the self. And healing, it's not a cure, it's a reunion between your inner truth and your lived self. It feels like clarity, like breathing deeply for the first time in years, like finally coming home to yourself without needing to earn your worth or apologize for your softness. You don't need anyone else to validate it. The tears, the tremble, the truth. It's yours, and that makes it real. That makes it enough. If this resonates, affirm it in the comments by writing, "My sadness deserves to be seen." Let that be your quiet rebellion, your first step toward emotional freedom, because this isn't the end of your sadness, but it might be the end of your shame, the end of hiding, the end of pretending you're fine, and the beginning of being deeply, fully, unapologetically human. And now that you've looked sadness in the eye, it's time to ask the next question. What if your life looks fine, but still doesn't feel right? That's exactly where we're going next. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly, not to fix anything, but just to feel yourself. Here, alive, present, still holding sadness, but maybe no longer held hostage by it. You've made it through a lot in this video. And if you've made it this far, maybe it's because a part of you knows the truth, can no longer stay buried. And you're ready, not for perfection, but for presence. If today's journey stirred something in you, journal on it tonight, not for answers, but to give your sadness a voice outside your head. Sometimes, the act of writing is the beginning of releasing, and if you found value in this, subscribe, not out of habit, but as a commitment to keep showing up for yourself. Here, we explore what most run from. We feel deeply, together. Next time, we dive into the sadness that makes no sense, the ache that lingers, even when everything should feel fine. Join me for the next video. Why you're sad even when nothing is wrong, the invisible cause. We'll unpack the hidden roots of existential depression and why joy sometimes gets lost in success. And if you haven't already, watch our earlier episode, Finding Strength Within, Navigating Happiness Barriers. It's a perfect mirror to today's message, because sadness and joy aren't opposites, they're siblings. So until next time, honor what you feel, even the ache, even the fog. You're not behind, you're becoming. And that is enough. Let me leave you with this. Sadness is not a mistake. It's a message, one you're finally ready to hear. And maybe, just maybe, ready to answer. You are watching Psychosophy, where psychology meets philosophy.